Welcome back, me lovely heathens. God, it's a bit fucking cold, isn't it? A bit on the chilly side. Welcome into part 3 of our project diary. Titles. Last time we looked at inspiration and planning for our display piece. We decided on a theme as well. We are going to have, as Morbag is covered in leaves and acorns, we decided on more of an autumn theme. If you haven't seen the second part, right up there. Linky link, somewhere. Now that we've planned, we've done a quick sketch, we know what we're going to be built, we need to look at what materials we're going to use. Now, some materials I buy, some materials I source and forage out of my garden and around. You don't need to buy everything. That said, you don't also need to make everything. Sometimes you will see there's great recipes for, look, make 5 gallons of nullen oil. It's much cheaper. It's cheaper per mil, but you'll make so much that it is actually not going to save you any money, because a lot of it will go off. So some things are cheaper to buy and some things are cheaper to forage. We'll have a look at different things that we can find either in the shops or just in our back garden. Dead simple. For materials, we're going to kind of cut it into 2 separate parts. The first part is our structure and our building part, the hard materials. And the second part is the soft materials, the dressing, what we put on afterwards. We'll have a look at both of those and have a think about which stuff we need to buy and which stuff we can just find. With that said, let's have a little look over at what we're going to use to build. Okay, get my coffee out of the way. Oh, that's good. A lot of the materials I use, I'll get from different places like Amazon or from AK or from Rival Crafts. So this was the base. This is the plinth base that we're going to be using. It's a lovely piece of bur oak, which I've been saving up for a special project, and we'll build on top of this. First what I note is actually how much size we have. This is about a 50 or 60 mil. So we don't have a huge amount of size. So we need to take that into consideration. Very often what I'll do is I'll take a bit of crappy plastic card and I will just draw and cut out the rough shape I have. It's easier to then place things on a piece of plastic card rather than constantly onto the plinth. But we'll come to that into part 4 when we are actually building. So of our hard materials, we'll start at what's going to be at the core. I like to use this. This is sculpture block. You can see I've already been using bits of it. Sculpture block it's polyurethane. It's polyurethane stuff rather than polystyrene. Like the usual, the pink foam that a lot of people use, that's essentially a polystyrene. And polystyrene has got some drawbacks. Super glue will melt through it. Rattle cans will melt it. The polyurethane doesn't have those problems. You can cut it very, very, very easily with a normal Stanley knife. Another good thing I found with it is with a file. You can actually sculpt with the file. Okay, I did a lot of that with the Hamlin build. Drawbacks, it's very gritty. It's like a very hard florist's foam, but it holds its shape perfectly. You can put super glue on it. You can rattle can the bugger if you want to, and it is very, very sturdy. So we're going to use that to build up our rock face. That'll be the first thing we're going to use. I always keep all scraps. Don't throw anything away, because the little scraps, I'm not going to cut into this when I come to Morbag because it's a small plinth. So I keep all my scraps in a shitty old plastic container like that. See, I've got loads of scraps from before. So a couple of these we can just place onto the plinth and see, okay, that's going to fit. I want to have some free space in the middle. So we'll probably use just a piece like that and cut into it. After that, we want to start making it look like rock. Again, we can cut into this a little bit to get some rock form, but other things like cork. Now, some people aren't fond of cork. I don't like cork when it ends up looking like cork. So you need to disguise the cork. But again, it's crumbly, it comes off, it's like little bits of stone and aggregate. So again, that's handy for starting to dress up the rock. Keep everything, lose nothing. I am that stingy, I will keep the tiniest little bit of cork in a plastic box like that. Plastic boxes are your friend. Other things we can use, again, I keep things, we've got resin bits from companies like Stoovar, AK. Again, more shitty little bits of cork, which I'd use when I started making bricks. Slate is wonderful as well. Be careful though, some slate is harder than others. Some you can drill into, no problem, with a HSS drill bit. Some it will not, it just won't, but it's still really nice for dressing your rock faces. Another great thing is cork bark. This is, it's not the cheapest, it's not the most expensive, but it makes beautiful rock structures. I could very, very easily, and we might even do that, simply cut a piece of cork bark, plant that, bang onto the plinth, and when it is primed and painted, it looks just like a lovely rocky outcrop. So we could use something like that as well. You can get this from most hobby shops. They come in bags. You can get it on Amazon as well. Source it out where you can. There are other trees that also shed bark. Lawson cypress does after a while. If you see bits of bark on the ground, keep them. Put them in your pocket. Whenever I go out for a walk or a run, I always have a little poly bag in my pocket because I will find excellent little pieces. A note: picking up bark off the ground is good. Pulling it off the tree is not good. Don't pull bark off the trees. You will hurt the tree. If you find it on the ground, it's yours. If it's on the tree, leave it the fuck alone. It's not yours. We will also talk about when you've got organics, which you find in woods, back garden, whatever. They must be, they need to be cleaned and they need to be sanitized. I'll talk about that a bit later on. But again, these are our initial pieces we're going to start the build with and start to get the build to take shape. Once we've got the larger bits down, we need to start looking at some finer bits. So things like bags of this pea gravel. Now, I bought a couple of bags of these, and these little bags are not particularly expensive. They're a couple of euro. You can go to a garden centre and get yourself a nice big 10 kilo bag of pea gravel. Unless you're doing a 6x4 table, you're probably not going to use 10 kilos of pea gravel ever. So in that case, it can be a little cheaper to actually buy a smaller bag of it. This again is nice to build up aggregate in around our basic structure. As we go down smaller and smaller, we get down to, this is one of my favorites. This is Red Canyon sand. It is not all the same grain. It is very, very fine, but it has some bigger bits in the inside. As you can see, there's a nice mix of very fine sand and some bigger stones as well. Again, very good thing to have and not particularly expensive if you source them well. I get a lot of my stuff from Rival Crafts. Sarah at Rival Crafts does an amazing range of basing materials. I have an affiliate code, which will be in the show notes. And if you use the affiliate code when you're ordering from Rival Crafts, I do get a little bit of a kickback, so it helps to support the channel. Sarah has expanded her range constantly, and it has got bigger and bigger and bigger, so that I'm buying more and more of my stuff from there because it's very good price and it's really good quality as well. So finer sand, an absolute must. Again, you could get it from the beach. As we get our initial base built, we might want to start adding in some elements, some rocks of a certain type. Milliput is great when you want to start sculpting your own rocks. I generally don't, because I normally have a good storage of different sizes and grains. And with that done, when we've got our initial structure, our superstructure is actually laid down. We've got a nice big rock face. We've got some stones going down to kind of a fine sand. We now need to bring it together. My usual go-to is a texture paste. There's loads of these. If you're going to get them, avoid the GW ones. The GW ones are stupidly expensive for what you get. Let's see if I can find one. There we go. All right, so little pot, that size. This is astrogranite debris. It really is, and it's already started to dry out. Of course it has. It's essentially sand, a medium, and some paint at the core. But look at the size of the pot. That is ridiculously small, and they're not cheap either. Look for companies like AK. Large pot, big pot, good. Little pot, shit. Big pot, good. This is wet ground. This is the smoothest I have. And again, it is exactly the same kind of thing. There's sand. There's some medium in there, some kind of sealing agent. and there'll be a color as well. I never actually use that color because I always paint over it. But again, this is an absolute belter, and you can bring this on, as we'll see in video 4 when I start building the damn thing. This starts to smooth things together and makes for your earth. You can get harder grits. This is from scale 75. Again, it's a smaller pot, but it's still bigger than this piece of this is called rough. And you can kind of see that it is a harder grain. Any of these do really, really nicely. Again, Soilworks from scale 75. Autumn Ground, this is a smooth paste. So they come in different varieties and gauges, from very, very, very smooth, which is made primarily with sand, to kind of tougher when it's larger sands and bits of aggregate. Once we've got our wet ground down, once we've got our kind of mud down, we want to start dressing. We want to start bringing in some softer things. And this will be especially for the base we're going to build, because it's going to be an autumn, muddy, rocky outcrop. So on top of the wet ground, I like to use these. Now, these are an absolute game changer. They are not expensive at all. They're brilliantly put together, and it's so, so handy. These are instant scatter. Again, scales, from Rival Crafts. I have a couple of bags of these. They come in different, this is Forest Floor, this is Autumn Woods. For me, it doesn't really matter which of the themes they are, because I paint them any which case. But you can get them in different colors and stuff for if you wanted to be quicker, where you're not going to paint them. In this is a lot of different biomatter. It's a peat, little bits of flakes, slate, and there's bits of lichen. There's all manner of different kind of organic material in here, and this goes onto the wet ground, onto our texture paste, beautifully. Zoom in a little bit, you can kind of have a look at what it is. I really recommend these. It's just called Instant Base Scatter. It is very, very, very well priced, and it is so handy. I've had these 2 bags for ages. You don't use that much really, but you can see that there's a really nice variety of material in there. Little bits of slate in there. We've got some coconut fiber, got little bits of moss, a little bit of lichen in there. There's some peat, some bark, very fine bark. This, as we'll see when we build the base in the next video, goes onto the wet ground beautifully, and the wet ground will then stick to it and stick it to the base. I really recommend these. I use these all the time in nearly every base and diorama I do. These get a little bit of play somewhere, so definitely something which you should have. Yes, you could make this yourself. It would take a while and a bit of pain in the arse, and the time that you'd spend making up a bag of this yourself, you will not get it cheaper than when you get these little bags. So definitely have a look at these things. I absolutely love them, and there's so much in them, they'll last you for a good while. Okay, still on our actual structure. Thump. When that's all said and done, we want to seal it. We're going to seal this down. Sand and gravel glue. Now, there's 2 different ways of kind of sealing things. The traditional way people used to say was, oh, water down PVA. I don't like PVA because it can reactivate with water. Water down wood glue. Water down wood glue is also good. It just takes a little longer to dry. This is a little belter. I think it's petroleum based. Sand and gravel glue. You can either use a brush or a pipette, and when your scatter is dry and down, you can put a layer of this on. It'll soak into everything, and it will glue it down. It doesn't leave a residue. It doesn't color it completely. Well, you can see it see-through. Duh. But this stuff is really good. I use a pipette, and basically just drip it onto the base, and it seals everything down beautifully. That said, if we want to put on a little bit of a tree, trees are good. These are from my garden. Again, don't start cutting up live trees, for God's sake. This is dead heather. All right, this is dead heather. The undergrowth of heather, very often the plant kills itself off, and if you go in under, you'll find a lot of dead growth. And these are perfect for anything from 30 mil up. They have lovely tree structure. You can put that straight onto a base, and you already have a lovely windswept blackthorn or buckthorn, like we get in the west of Ireland. So it has that structure already. You can take pieces off it, you can break it down, so on and so forth. This stuff is great. This is really good, and it can be the basis for your tree. I keep a box of this stuff because we've got so much bloody heather in the garden. And again, you've got that lovely bark texture already there. And again, look for dead growth. Don't start pulling out clumps of live growth. I have a huge box of this. I go and harvest it in the garden every so often. Anything that you get from your own garden, it needs to be sanitized. What I do is I put it into the oven for about half an hour. That will kill off any biomatter, any spores, any insect eggs, anything like that. It will also get all the moisture out of it, so you don't get mold. But again, keep boxes of all this stuff. Stuff also out of my garden. None of this is cork bark. This is bark, again, straight out of my garden. From one of the trees, and it was naturally shed just lying in the ground, and it has been through the oven, so it's totally dried out. It stayed in this box. There's not a mold or anything on it. Once you put it onto the base, you can again seal it either with this, or you can make your own terrain sealant, which is usually, I think, matte medium and water. I think works pretty well. I just use the sand and gravel glue. It's kind of handy. It smells good. But again, bits of bark out of the garden. And all this stuff is beautiful to keep. And when it's painted, comes up as lovely rock outcrops. And if we want to, this you will have to buy. This is called sea foam. Now, having a tree structure is one thing. But if you're wanting to make foliage out on it, we can start using sea foam. I got my sea foam from Green Stuff World. It's not that expensive. You can break off little pieces and then stick them carefully onto your tree structure, and you'll build up foliage canopies. And if you want to go further, you can then put leaves and stuff on top, which will work really nicely. Not particularly expensive, very, very, very used by scale modelers. And you can see already, even on its own, it has the look and the structure of a birch tree. So it's something else we can use. All these materials, again, what do I source from the garden? Whatever I can. And what do I get from suppliers? But I have to. Roots. Again, I got a bag of vines. This is again from Rival Crafts. Creeping vines. It's a couple of euro. And I got a huge big bag of vines. And again, these are beautiful to use as root structures. Gluing them to the underside of your tree and then having them crawl over rocks. So you can show exposed roots. I will put links for all the companies that I've sourced stuff from Green Stuff World to AK, to Scale, and of course to Rival Crafts. With the affiliate link will be in the show notes. So that's what I kind of call our hard dressing, our hard structure. So using all those materials, we'll have built up our scene, our vignette scene. After the hard comes the soft. Giggity. Then we start looking at our soft dressings. Soft dressings will usually be coming on after we've started to paint the base. So let's have a little look at some of our soft dressings. Okay. So just as a quick example of what we were talking about. This is all the hard basing here. Again, this is all bark from my garden. Glued in place and then painted to make it look like stone. And around here was again the wet grounds and with some instant base scatter pushed into it. Give the idea of kind of mulch and muck. So let's have a look at soft dressing. First of all, the obvious one, our box of tufts. I get tufts from all different companies, from Rival Crafts to AK to all over the place. My favorite one is usually Gamer's Grass. I think they make some of the nicest ones. What I like about the Gamer's Grass is your regular tufts. Some companies will do this very regular, which are okay. If you clump them together, you can kind of disguise that, or you can cut them up. I do particularly like Gamer's Grass. They do these irregular shapes. But again, it's 6 1/2 dozen. It's kind of up to what you want. But for me, the irregular shapes kind of take the biscuit. You can make your own tufts. Is it worth the hassle? For the price of tufts from a lot of the companies, no. It's really not worth the hassle making your own. I prefer to just save the time. Other things that we're going to start dressing with. So if we want moss, Go into your kitchen, get some dried parsley, put it into a pestle and mortar. Grind it down. Pestle and mortar. Mortar and pestle. Grindy thing. If you grind it down, again, it makes a really nice moss when it is combined with sand and gravel glue. It works really, really well. Generally what I will do is I will put down a nice little amount of my dried parsley, and then with a brush I just shape it into edges between stones or into little gaps in trees and stuff, and then with a brush, just with a little capillary action, some sand and gravel glue, and then paint it off. That's just dried parsley, which is then ground down even further, and it makes for great moss. Lichen, whatever you say. Again, this sort of stuff makes for lovely bushes and shrubs. You can also then buy different flowers. These are dried flowers. We'll come to drying things in a minute. Really nice little dried flowers, again, all from Rival Crafts. I keep a whole pile of these for different uses, different colors. You can see I usually prefer the more autumnal colors. But again, beautiful little dried flowers, and these dress your base or your vignette beautifully. Now, leaves. Leaves are, again, something really handy. You can buy, these are birch leaves, well, birch seeds. You can buy birch seeds which have been dyed in different colors. Yeah, we've got 5 birch trees in my garden, so I'm never without bloody birch seeds. They get flipping everywhere. You can buy these, and they make for lovely leaves to put onto your terrain. They look like kind of a 3-pointed maple leaf when they're dried out. Or you can go and get, I got these from AK. This little box was about €6 with that many leaves in it. I really don't think that's a good deal. That's a bit too expensive. And here's when we can make our own stuff. So, especially now that, well, we're into winter, out in the garden you should be able to find a plethora of dried dead leaves. Now, just using dried leaves from your oven, there's a problem because they will lose their color, so we want to preserve them. I'll do another short video at some point about preserving, drying and preserving leaves. Basically what we use is this stuff, glycerin. You can dry leaves just like you used to press flowers and leaves in a book, which is fine, but you want something which is going to preserve the color as well. So a solution of 1 part glycerin, 2 parts water, you can use to soak your leaves and then preserve them. Once they're totally preserved and dried again, then we can use these little stamps. And you can see on top all the different leaves we've got, from maple, there's ones with birch, oak, all different types. You can see they're little stamps, and they are so simple to use. It simply is a case of, if it doesn't go wrong, you simply just put the stamp onto your leaf, pump it out, and you will get these lovely little leaves. The advantage of doing them with an actual leaf is you will get little bits of veining and stuff in them. But again, if you want to keep the color, you need to preserve them first. And we will do, that's not the wrong thing. We'll do a video about preserving and stamping leaves at some point. But again, very easy to do, doesn't take you long, and it is way cheaper than buying these little dafty boxes where you get not a huge amount for 5e money. It's almost GW prices. Other ones that you can use as well, again, I got these from AK. These I love. This is one of my favorite products. This was AK. These are sticky flower tufts, and I use them in almost everything. You just pull them out. These are not really in any sort of shape. It's a big mass of mat, and you just pull out the pieces you want. Some are white, some are purple, and some are just the darkened dead color. Again, stuff you can pick up. Birch foliage. I got this for an upcoming commission where I'm going to have to be putting in birch trees. And again, not particularly expensive, and you won't use that much at a time. So 1 packet should last you a hell of a long time. And those are basically all our kind of soft dressings. From foliages, flowers, grasses, tufts, the whole 9 yards. And those are the kind of materials we're going to be using. So I have a whole lot of other materials as well, but I picked out the specific materials that I will probably use in the build for Morbag's base. Some of them are particularly picked out because they will suit an autumn scene better. Some of them are picked out because the colors are more autumnal. But these are all basically the things that we're going to be using next time in our next video. So thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy it, do please make sure to follow me in the socials. All the notes and the links for the companies that I used are down in the show notes. Again, if you do want to use Rival Crafts, do use my affiliate code because it gives a little kickback to the channel and does help us out massively. Until the next time, my friends, take care.